See you on the other side. Stay alive. Stay alive. I got to keep it together. Keep it together. Keep it together. See you on the other side. Stay alive. Stay alive. I got to keep it together. Keep it together. I got to keep it together. Keep it together. Keep it together.
The M3 and M4 that spring to mind. Vehicles that have been partly upstaged by the new but scintillating M2. But there is another lesser known upstart that ticks many of the same boxes as those performance flagships, and it's just been updated. Actually, make that a couple of lesser known upstarts. The BMW M240i Coupe and equivalent M140i hatch have just received notable updates for 2017, with a power upgrade, additional standard trim and a cheaper purchase price. Inline turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, rear-wheel drive, 250 kilowatts of power and 500 newton meters of torque. Now, if my schoolboy maths is correct, that's more torque on paper than the M2, and this thing costs $15,000 less. Yep, you heard right. The recipient of a redesigned engine with a shorter intake and integrated manifold intercooler, the M240i and equivalent M140i hatch produce 35 newton meters more than the M2's older generation power plant on paper, at least until the M2 arrives at a peak 500 newton meters via an overboost function. The M240i's performance suite also includes adaptive end suspension, variable sport steering, 4-piston front and 2-piston rear brakes, and an electronic differential lock. So is the 240i a dynamic equivalent for the M2? Well, I'll get to that in a little bit, but the first impression is certainly strong. It has crisp steering, excellent body control, and that inherent front to rear balance that you'd expect from a BMW coupe. So, dynamic box tick there. And it goes. In case you were wondering, 0 to 100 takes just 4.6 seconds in the M240i. That makes it 0.3 of a second slower than the M2, but it uses less fuel doing so. Make no mistake, this car is all about the driving experience, and for me, the engine has to be the highlight. It has this really rich torque curve that materialises from just 1520 RPM, and then it segues into this usable and peaky rev ceiling. Stringing the entire package together is either an 8-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual, and they both seem to offer the right gear for any speed or any occasion. Similarly, the M240i's ride is more compliant than rivals of this ilk, with firm but comfortable progress over all but the bumpiest of surfaces. Road noise and a lack of a digital speedo are about the only real foibles in terms of packaging, while limited brakes and lesser equipped tyres slightly detract from the dynamic experience on track. Now unfortunately none of the cars that we're driving today feature that optional mechanical limited slip differential, and from what we've learnt in the previous M235i and M135i, that's a bit of a prerequisite if you want to drive the car out on the track. But even in standard guys, this car is quite a capable device on a twisting bit of road. So, is it an M2 killer? Look, out on the track, the M240i is very good, but it doesn't quite get there in terms of its more storied sibling. The fact it misses out on that limited slip rear differential and also some of the M-car fine tuning means it doesn't quite get there. But as a road car, this thing is a formidable weapon. It's $15,000 cheaper than the M2 and it's not subject to a waiting list. If you weren't fussed on having the M2 badge on your boot, well then this thing should definitely be up for consideration.
See you on the other side. Stay right See you on the other side. Stay alive. Stay alive. I got to keep it together. Keep it together. I got to keep it together. Keep it together. Keep it together.
So bright, I don't wanna lose that somebody. I don't wanna lose somebody, somebody, somebody. I don't wanna lose somebody. I don't wanna lose somebody, somebody,
This is James Reswick for Autoblog, and I'm here just outside San Diego, California, and there's some turkeys over there, so that's what you'll eventually hear. And this is the 2017 Mazda MX-5 RF, retractable fastback, and I'm going to show you just how the top origamis itself down and then back up again. And then let's put it back up. So it's a solid piece in the middle, and then there's a glass window, and then the buttresses always remain in place. So there you have it.
Honda redesigns the Accord. They claim it has more sleek and emotional styling, but the fairly conservative lines will probably age well. Honda is trying to liven things up with a new sport model. Based on the 4-cylinder sedan, it adds 18-inch wheels and a spoiler. While most automakers have dropped sedan-based coupes from their lineup, Honda still offers one. Beyond aesthetics, Honda improved some practicalities. The previous Accord came in for some criticism for being a bit too big. This car is a couple inches shorter. One thing Honda didn't need to fix was the old car's visibility. If anything, it got even better in this car. There's lots of glass all around you and a really thin windshield pillar. Most Accords will have a new 4-cylinder engine featuring Honda's Earth Dreams technology. That includes direct injection and a new continuously variable transmission, or CVT. A welcome surprise for car enthusiasts is that you can still get your Accord with a manual transmission. There aren't that many choices left. While some car companies have eliminated 6 cylinders from their family sedan lineup, Honda still expects a good number of buyers will opt for their 3.5-liter V6. It uses a 6-speed automatic with an available manual in the coupe. Honda is claiming best-in-class fuel economy from all the engine changes, improved aerodynamics, and slightly reduced vehicle weight. However, Honda's going to have quite a fight on their hands to beat the new, very efficient Nissan Altima. But if you want better fuel economy, Honda is going to offer the Accord as 2 different hybrids. First introduced will be a plug-in hybrid that will be good for about 10 miles of battery-only range. The battery does take up a good amount of trunk space though. A more conventional non-plug-in hybrid will come later. Even though the Accord is shorter outside, they work to make it bigger inside. This is a rather spacious car with a very accommodating rear seat. Honda also spiffed up the interior with some nicer trim and fewer buttons. We borrowed 2 Accords from Honda to get initial driving impressions. The Accord went to electric steering in order to help fuel economy. Luckily, steering feels quite a bit better in this car than it has been in other recent Honda and Acura efforts. Road noise is a long-time Accord complaint. It seems to be a bit better in this car. However, the ride in the V6 version, it's stiffer than we'd like. Finally, we had complained that earlier Accords, well, they were a bit weak when it came to feature content. Honda attacked that complaint head-on with standard Bluetooth, USB port, even a standard backup camera. All of this comes at a rather competitive price, which is surprising given that Hondas are typically on the expensive side. So at first glance, the new Accord appears to be a very competitive car. Well, it really better be, because there's a whole lot of competition here. We'll find out how the Accord stacks up when we buy 1 or 2 to test here at the Consumer Reports test track.
the new 2017 Chevrolet Bolt. It's a game-changing electric car that has both industry insiders and shoppers lining up for a test drive. The 2017 Chevy Bolt is generating a lot of buzz, and for good reason. Now, pure electric cars are not exactly new, but what's got people talking this time around is the combination of price and range. If you're considering an electric car, you probably already know about range, or how many miles the car will travel on a fully charged battery. It's also a source of anxiety for many EV drivers. Well, that's where the Bolt EV really impresses. The Bolt delivers a whopping 238 miles on a full charge. That's about the same distance a gasoline-powered car can go between fill-ups. With that range, you might expect a six-figure Tesla-like price. Consider the $7,500 tax credit, and you'll get the Bolt for around $30,000, and that's not factoring in any state or local incentives that might be available. As for powering up, just plug into the 240-volt 32-amp home charging unit at night, and by morning, the car is ready to go. The Bolt comes in two trim levels, the well-equipped LT and the loaded Premier model. Both use the same batteries and electric motor to deliver 200 horsepower. We also opted for the DC fast charging option that charges the battery up to 160 EV miles in 60 minutes, or roughly 90 miles in just half an hour. This option costs an extra $750. Inside the Bolt, it's surprisingly roomy. By placing the batteries under the cabin floor, Chevy created a lot more usable interior space. The weight of the subfloor batteries also gives the Bolt a more planted feel on the road that you'll appreciate. And acceleration is surprisingly quick, like 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds. But be warned, the electronic shifter takes a minute to get used to, as does the Regen on-demand paddles. What that does is it diverts energy from the wheels back into the battery. Makes it so that when you lift your foot off the accelerator, the car slows down more rapidly than usual to the point where you can actually bring the car to a stop without ever touching the brake pedal. This Premier model's sporty leather seats, oversized touchscreen, and wraparound dash with ambient lighting give it an edgy feel that we think shoppers will be into. And there are lots of creature comforts like front and rear heated seats, heated steering wheel, and an available Bose audio system depending on the model and options you choose. As for cargo versatility, the 60-40 split rear seats are easy to fold down, so there's plenty of room in the back for gear or groceries. There's even a false bottom in the cargo area so you can keep some things out of sight, or you can just take it out all the way to get more vertical space. If you're into the latest tech, you'll appreciate the impressive 10.2-inch touchscreen along with the optional infotainment package for just $485. It includes wireless charging and dual USB ports plus a 7-speaker Bose stereo. We also like the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay capability. Keep in mind, if you want all the available safety tech, you'll need to buy the more expensive Premier model plus the driver confidence package. Yes, the new Bolt EV is generating a lot of buzz, but with its combination of comfort, tech, incredible range, and compelling price, the 2017 Chevrolet Bolt is definitely living up to the hype.
So bright, I don't wanna lose that somebody. I don't wanna lose somebody, somebody, somebody. I don't wanna lose somebody, somebody. so bright. I don't wanna lose that somebody. I don't wanna lose somebody, somebody, somebody. I don't wanna
Consumer Reports has long been a fan of the Mazda 3. This generation of the car addresses some shortcomings. Like other recent Mazdas, the 3 is built using Mazda's Skyactiv philosophy. Think of it as getting a lot out of, well, not very much at all. The 3 shares its platform with the CX-5 small SUV and the Mazda 6 mid-sized car. Weight reduction was important. The new car weighs about 100 pounds less. Less weight helps fuel economy. It also helps have a very efficient engine. The base engine is Mazda's Skyactiv 2-liter 4-cylinder. It's updated to have considerably more mid-range torque. There's good power here, but if you want more, the S model has a 2.5-liter with almost 30 more horsepower. Mazda again did a lot with less when it comes to packaging. Overall length is down, but there's a longer wheelbase. That means there's more interior space, especially in the back seat. This car is a hatchback, which adds cargo flexibility, but you can also get a sedan. Basic cars like this pre-production 3i Touring 5-door have simple controls, but it's a long reach to the radio pod. Upper-level cars have a heads-up display for driver information and a touchscreen radio that can also be controlled with a console knob. We'll find out how all the high-tech stuff works when we buy our own test cars, but for now we can tell you that the Mazda 3 is a lot of fun to drive. That's really important because its sporty handling was something that made the 3 stand out in this crowded segment. When you drive the 3, you're reminded that this is built from the Zoom car company, the one that still builds the MX-5 Miata. Another plus on this particular car is the super slick 5-speed manual transmission. It's simply a joy to use. Too bad most people are going to buy the automatic because they're missing out on some fun. Our first impression is that the 3 is quieter inside than it used to be. Now, it's still not as quiet as a Ford Focus or Chevy Cruze, but the Mazda's noise levels are now tolerable on the highway. So the Mazda 3 is a fun-to-drive car with plenty of features. We'll find out if it achieves best-in-class fuel economy and if it gives up anything in refinement to do so. For more, check out consumerreports.org.
Seth with Autoblog, and I'm here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca with the 2016 Ford Shelby GT350 Mustang. We drove two today. Hey all, this is Seth with Autoblog, and I'm here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca with the 2016 Ford Shelby GT350 Mustang. We drove two today. The standard car and the R, both of them have the same 5.2 liter V8 engine, naturally aspirated, making 526 horsepower and 429 pound-feet of torque.
We've got to keep the windows down. It's going to be really windy in here, so if you can't hear me, just enjoy the ride. Here we go.
So the really cool thing about this engine is that it's got a flat plane crankshaft, which means that it can rev really, really high. It sounds a little bit like a Ferrari with an American accent, and it tops out at 8,250 RPM, which is kind of okay on the road, but it's really, really cool on the racetrack. The Big problem with the engine is that there is a little bit of a dead spot under 3,000 RPM. It still feels really fast. You just have to be willing to wring it out, which means that if you're using it for more cruising, a daily driver around the city, you might not feel the power as much as you would in something like a Hellcat. Now, in terms of the difference between the standard car and the R, primarily we're talking about tires. I mean, there are some important differences too. There's a different aero package, you're getting more downforce, but after doing actually just a few laps of the track, we didn't have a lot of track time. The thing that really stands out is the rubber is super impressive. So is the GT350 something that you want to own? I mean, if you're a hardcore Mustang guy, it's going to be a car that you're attracted to because it's got the Shelby nameplate, it's got a lot of history behind it, it looks bananas, it looks so good, and it's a lot of fun to drive on the road. I don't know that you get so much in day-to-day driving over and above what you're getting out of a 5-liter Mustang GT that it's worth the extra money. That being said, at around $50,000 to start, the car is an insane value overall in terms of your performance per dollar. Long story short, everybody and their mother wants to drive this car versus the Chevy Camaro Z28, including me. I want to know how the two cars stack up. Still, I had a great day out here in Northern California. I think the GT350 is an excellent road car, and I think that Mustang fans are going to be really, really excited to get behind the wheel. For Autoblog, I'm Seth Mearsma.